Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Sherry Huff, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Advocacy Committee for ASAHPERD. And tonight we'll be talking about Advocacy 101 with Jada Schaefer. Um, and Connie, would you like to say anything to the group?
Well, just good evening, everyone, and we're happy that you're here with us today as Jada gives us some key points on Advocacy 101 and how ASAHPERD can benefit from the information that she's going to share with us tonight. Jada and I have had a long relationship, and I have been in many advocacy platforms with her. So she is an expert in her field. And like I said, they do offer a lot of training for individuals who seek it. So Sherry, if you will introduce our speaker for this evening, I'd appreciate it.
All right, we have Miss Jada Schaefer from the American Heart Association, and she's the Government Relations Regional Lead, and she's going to share with us what we can do to promote ASAHPERD and give us examples of things that have happened when people have advocated for their cause. So go ahead, Jada.
Great, thank you, ladies. I'm glad to be here. I'm just going to give a little bit of background about myself. So as Sherry mentioned, I am the Government Relations Regional Lead for Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. And what that means is I lobby and run our advocacy campaigns here in the state of Alabama, and I supervise our advocacy team in Georgia and Tennessee. And even though that I'm a lobbyist, that's like the worst part of my job. It's still intimidating. I don't really enjoy the lobbying component. But what I really do enjoy is advocating. And I also love working with partners, giving constituents and people who've been impacted by issues a voice. And so I've been doing advocacy, gosh, since my 20s. And I started out with the State Employees Association, advocating for state employees, and I have advocated for children. I've also worked for a lobbying firm where I've done a ton of strictly lobbying. I hated that. And that's how I ended up at the American Heart Association, where now we advocate for cardiovascular health for children and adults. And so I'm really passionate about it. I love thinking about strategies and tools and ways that we can really apply pressure to lawmakers to make policy change in Alabama. Today, we're going to talk about what is advocacy and then some tools that you guys can use in your work, in your personal lives and in your professional lives, on how you can advocate for an issue that you guys care about. So I hope this conversation's conversational. You guys are probably all on mute now, but feel free to come off mute, ask me questions. There's going to be a few questions that I ask throughout, so please, feel free to chime in. Or if you're not comfortable speaking, just put it in the chat box. Ginger is monitoring the chat box, and we'll pose those questions as we go. So, what is advocacy? Is advocacy change in policy? Is it hosting a rally? Is it speaking to the media? Is it talking to lawmakers? What do you think advocacy is? Anyone have any thoughts on what advocacy is?
I think it's just verbalizing your passion for a particular topic and trying to get other people to support that cause. And for me, I've learned over my career that advocacy really isn't a one-time event. It is, it's more of a marathon rather than a sprint. It's those intentional activities and networking, making connections with people that can support you.
Absolutely. And then is there, can someone come off mute and share an example of the time they advocated for something and how you went about doing that?
Well, I guess I'll go. I think I started early on when I was a professor on the campus of ASU, and there were issues concerning food deserts and food disparity. And so when we were given the information, my students and I sort of got on board and we said, let's talk about food deserts, and then let's see if our campus is located in a food desert. So we divided ourselves up into groups and we went north, east, and west, probably about a mile from the campus. And students basically had to document what they saw in reference to a grocery store, fast food, restaurants, and just places where people could actually purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. And so we got a lot of media attention from that, which was great because it literally brought attention to food deserts, not just in the Montgomery area, but especially in our rural counties, what some people call the Black Belt. So it was a wonderful opportunity for my students to be engaged in the process, and then for them to understand what a food desert was and how you can make change if you, as Ginger was saying, advocate and stay the course, because it's not just an overnight thing. It's, when you're dealing with policy, it can take years. So there was some legislation that came about after that. So I'm happy about, our involvement in that piece.
I can also share advocating for something that's important. In my school system, we had a tobacco policy and it was only like a paragraph, and I'm the district wellness chair. So I got the committee together and had them look at what we had, and we were able to change it, and we just got it approved just a few weeks ago. But it went from being a paragraph to a few pages of a very detailed tobacco, vaping, e-cigarette policy that it passed with no problem, which I was pleasantly surprised. So I think when you're passionate about something and you know something's important and you advocate for it and it is the right thing to do, people see that and they will support what you're advocating.
Great. I mean, lucky you that a tobacco policy was no problem. Usually that's the biggest and hardest thing to accomplish at the state legislature because of the big tobacco lobbyists. You guys are all correct. It is a marathon, as someone said, and it takes a lot of passion and a lot of strategy and a group of folks to make that policy change. By definition, advocacy is the application of pressure and influence on the people and institutions that have the power to give you what you want. So, with that in mind, why is advocacy important? Advocacy is important because there are many issues that our communities, our children, our families, and individuals face. At the Alabama legislature alone, there are 142 lawmakers with 815 principals, which are businesses and organizations who are registered with the Alabama Ethics Commission, who are being represented by 555 lobbyists. And so through all of that, these principals and these big businesses and these organizations have representation at the Alabama legislature day in and day out. The lobbyists and these businesses have relationships with lawmakers. They make sure that their issues are priorities. Oftentimes, numerous times, these organizations and businesses give campaign contributions. There are any given year, there's over 1,000 to 2,000 pieces of legislation introduced every year. And so in order to make our issue and our our issues that our communities and families are facing, or even our organization, a priority, we have to be creative and figure out ways that we can apply pressure and influence to the people that give us, those that have the power to give us what we want. And so what do you think keeps us from advocating? Why do you think some people are nervous about advocating, or keeps people from being engaged in advocating?
Fear. They're afraid that it won't do any good, or they'll be wasting their time.
And they think that they don't have a voice, or they don't have any power to make change. And then some people think that when they think of advocacy, they think of it being, like a lobbyist, some big paid person that, goes out and do all of these things to make change. And they don't realize that they, what they can do just by speaking up about an issue, because that is advocacy in itself. So
I think a lot of people don't advocate because they don't know how. They don't know how to get started. They don't know what to do. For some educators, will often say, well, if I do that, I'm going against my principal and that could cost me my job. So fear, but I also think the lack of understanding, like Connie said, of what they can do, but really just not knowing how to get started.
It is the legislative process, or even passing an ordinance, or even passing a policy at your local school board, or even lobbying your principal. A lot of times your principal has the power to give you what you want, can keep you from advocating. I think all of those things are very true. And so, going back to the definition of advocacy, applying pressure and influence on the people and institutions that have the power to give you what you want. So I think where we should start, and where we should always start, is once you identify your issue and your topic, identify who has the power to give you what you want. Is it the principal that you're referring to? Is it the Birmingham City School Board, where Sherry just advocated for the tobacco policy? Is it the city council of where you live? Is it the state legislature, or is it Congress? Figuring out where you should start is the key. Like, who, thinking through your process and thinking about your issue. So with Sherry recently working on the tobacco school policy, she knew that the Birmingham School Board had the power and the authority to give her what she wanted. Oftentimes it's the city council or the Alabama legislature who actually has the authority to pass a policy. School boards as well, or Congress. Those are typically the three areas that we focus on. And so thinking about these groups of people, and they have the power of changing policy for you, what are some tactics and tools to go about doing that? So how would you apply pressure and influence those people at the state legislature, in Congress, at the school board, your principal? What are some tactics and thoughts on how you would go about applying pressure and influence?
letter writing.
Letter writing's very good.
Well, you just provide them with data and statistics that show why there's a need for what you're advocating for.
Rallies, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, all of those things are absolutely ways. This is a little pressure and influence chart that whenever I'm thinking about an issue, especially an issue for the Heart Association or an organization that I'm working with, of some things that I always like to try to include. I have a campaign model that I do. It's research and data collection, grassroots and grass tops, media advocacy, coalition building, and decision-making advocacy. And I've learned over the years, in order to be effective, these tactics coming together makes it easy for a decision maker to say yes. Now, it's kind of sometimes overwhelming, so you have to really kind of choose, what tactics that you have one as an organization in the capacity to do. It could be one or two of these tactics. It could be all of these tactics together. And so these are just some examples of tactics that I'm going to touch on over the next few slides on that have been effective, and ways that oftentimes you'll have a group of people who are great speaking with the media. Connie loves to be in front of the camera. You have folks who have a personal story. Someone who is, the students who were walking by all of the fast food restaurants that go to Alabama State, and they had to, had no options for a grocery store. They were working or going to school in a food desert. You have data that with the tobacco policy, I'm sure you presented the number of children, the vaping epidemic data, and probably some stories that of kids being impacted, or teachers, catching 10-year-olds vaping. And so all of these tactics together can really make you effective. And, sometimes you can pull all these tactics together in a year and get some legislation passed, depending on how controversial your issue is. Or it may take, years and years of pulling this together to really be effective. But these tactics are used in multiple campaigns, not only in Alabama, but across the country. And I swear by them. So the first thing is we need to know this. All politics are local. We elect our elected officials. We vote every 4 years on our House. On our city councils, we have different years that we vote. School boards, I think our school board here is elected every 8 years or something odd like that. But most of these folks are elected officials. And so they really, believe it or not, there's lots of research that shows that politicians, elected officials really listen to their constituents. They care about the issues that are happening at home, and they can be influenced and pressured by those folks at home. And so, what that means is, when you're looking at those decision makers who you're targeting for a policy change, start getting to know them in your district. Or, if, say, in Montgomery, Connie can get in touch with the legislators here, Sherry in Birmingham, have a plan to where each members of your team get to know those elected officials. When their elections are coming up right now, go to the rallies that they are at. If you run into them at church, or if you run into them at the grocery store, don't be fearful to ask them, hey, how do you feel about this issue? They're there because you elected them, and they really do care about what their constituents say. I can tell you, there have been numerous times I can go in and ask for them to vote one way all day long. It doesn't matter if the legislator is my best friend, through work. But then if I call their pastor, if I call their principal that their kids go to where the kids go to school, or if I call their superintendent, or their wife, if I know their wife, in talking to people that they know in their community, even their physician, based on what you know about those elected officials, they're more likely going to listen to those people who are in their district and who they're going to, if they support the issue based on what their constituents feel and say, and what issues they're facing. So the more opportunities that you and our advocates have to directly connect with legislators, the more effective our advocacy will be. So here's some additional tools. So one of the big things is, and can be very powerful, is to be a coalition or not. you know, that you can bring partners to the table. You really kind of want to find out, are there groups or organizations working on this? And so, you know, for ASAHPERD, you guys may not have the capacity to build a coalition, but there may be already a coalition out there that's working on physical activity standards. And so do you make the decision to start your own coalition and bring partners along, or do you join this coalition? Or do you join other organizations that are working on the issue that you care about? So personally, you may think, okay, well, the American Heart Association is working on water access. So I would like to join the organization and work on water access or tobacco. A lot of the larger national organizations have an option to like email advocates where they can directly contact you with your lawmaker. You know, you really kind of got to decide, you know, one, kind of do your research to see who's working on it, who you can partner with. There's always, you know, numbers, power in numbers. So, you know, pulling together multiple organizations. We may have 3,500 people in our database. You guys may have 4,500. Alabama Arise may have, you know, 7,000. So pulling together our resources and working together on an issue is really effective. But, you know, personally, there are several groups that I'm involved in that are personal issues that I care about, that I have joined, you know, their action alerts, so that I don't have to bear the whole responsibility of taking action. They provide me the tools to do that. And so, you know, think about how you can engage partners, how you can, if there's coalitions already out there working on it, how you can work with them to advance your issue. Does anyone have any questions about that or comments? Next is the media. The media can be very powerful. And a lot of times people in groups think, oh, well, I don't have any money for media. There are so many earned media opportunities out there. One of the most effective tools is sitting down with the Alabama political reporters. There's a group of them who all of lawmakers, well, I'm gonna say the state lawmakers, like, look at their papers. There's local newspapers. You can host a press conference for free. You can send out a press release. You can write a letter to the editor. You can do an op-ed. You can do a walk in a food desert like Connie did, and she invited the media and then did social media. So there's numerous opportunities out there to get your message out. And by utilizing the media, not only are you educating the public about your issue, you're educating lawmakers about your issue. So, you know, being strategic in your legislative targets and who you're trying to move, what papers are in their district. There's a lot of local papers that you may want to place a letter to the editor, op-ed. Another key strategy is engage your lawmakers in your press conferences. I've learned over the years that provide that lawmaker with talking points and you have them on record, and having them on record supporting your issue makes it much more difficult for them to go back and change their mind. I have a really good example of this past week. In Shreveport, Louisiana, a year ago, they passed a smoke-free ordinance, and the city council member that our staff worked with and advocates worked with, they have him on record doing a media interview saying that he was there for cardiovascular health. He supported smoke-free, a comprehensive smoke-free ordinance. Well, the casino industry got into him over this past year, and he reintroduced an ordinance exempting casinos. And so we were able to take that media clip and remind him in so many ways, through social media, through radio ads and that sort of thing. No, you committed to this. Well, he was embarrassed, and he ended up carrying his ordinance over indefinitely. So it's a great tool, one, for them to care about your issue, but then also you can hold them accountable in so many ways. And it can be intimidating. I think, you know, someone may be comfortable with, you know, sending the press release out. You may have one or two people go and set up a meeting with a packet of information with the Capitol Core Press. You know, they'll hop on a call with you. You can talk about your issues. You know, always, you know, try to be prepared and find the people that are most comfortable in doing that. Or, you know, writing a letter to the editor is, you know, writing. It's not, you're not out there speaking in public and being on the front stage. You're, you know, simply writing a letter to the editor. And, you know, all around it educates and informs, and lawmakers also see that people care about the issue through that. And of course, it's free. I mean, there's lots of paid things that you can do, obviously, but, you know, if you have no budget, you can do a lot of free things. Social media has been the biggest and, to me, the most fun tool there is. We have Twitter handles for most lawmakers. Most of them are on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way to get to lawmakers. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I really honestly prefer Twitter because that's where a lot of lawmakers find their news sources. And you can easily tweet at them. You know, you want to be respectful. It's powerful to do stories. Here's an example of a hashtag I Am Medicaid campaign where legislators they threatened not to fund Medicaid one year. And it really kind of turned about race. We had a volunteer who said, why don't we change the faces of Medicaid? It's just not poor, low income people. It's kids with disabilities. It's adults with disabilities. There's, you know, numerous people. It's just not, you know, quote, lazy people. And so this campaign really hit off, and basically it was a hashtag I Am Medicaid, and there were parents, parents, physicians, organizations who really participated in that and really drew the attention of lawmakers. And so tweeting at a lawmaker or sharing social media content can be really effective. And you can do it from the computer. Does anyone have any questions around that? I will tell you, and this one makes me want to cry a little bit, sharing personal stories. So sharing personal stories, especially from people and kids from legislators' districts, can be very powerful. I mean, how can you, this little boy to the left is Camden. He died at a daycare down in Mobile. Sorry, this gets me all upset. This is a little boy that was injured at daycare who broke his femur and had to be airlifted at a unlicensed daycare center. And then there's a little boy that was in the process of being adopted, whose parents were drug addicts, and he was on Medicaid. And so showing these stories to lawmakers, I will say Camden's story and Colby's story, they really made an impact on on changing licensing in Alabama for childcare. The churches were highly opposed. Churches in Alabama are very politically connected and very influential. They host legislative breakfast every Wednesday. They have a very powerful lobbying team. And we were able to bring personal stories to the State House. And they can be really impactful, and it can, you know, really show lives that are impacted. And so I know right now I'm working with Connie and some of you, Sherry, on water access in schools, and we're identifying some stories where coaches don't have access to water or students don't have access to water. And so we hope to utilize some of those stories to move lawmakers on water access in the future. So lobby day versus rallies. This is another tactic. Rallies are great for bringing attention to your issue. They're great for bringing attention to the media and to educate the public. But having a rally alone is not as effective as it is to have a rally with a lobby day. And what do I mean by that? Typically on a lobby day, if you host a rally, you do the rah, 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 get the media attention, bring advocates together. It's a good, fun thing to do. But what if you just left and went home? So we got some media attention, we yelled and screamed and cheered, and then you just went home. How effective do you think that is in changing policy? So you
haven't really made that personal connection with the change maker, the person who could actually support your policy, with the other members of the legislature. So yeah, you were outside and people saw you, but you didn't go in and talk to anybody and make them make a commitment to support you or to hear what they thought about, what you were rallying for.
Exactly. There's a lot of groups who, and we're experiencing this kind of with Medicaid expansion right now, who want to go to the Capitol and lobby, or not lobby, do a rally. And so my question to them the other day was, okay, you're going to do this, but who are you going to talk to while you're there? Mm-hmm. Why don't you guys go ahead and set up a meeting with the governor's office or her chief of staff and go in and express your concerns and have a policy ask? I think often, I think it's great to bring awareness, but if you don't connect with that lawmaker, they don't know, one, you haven't made that personal connection, so they can't tell you yes or no, and you really can't gauge your support. So, if you're going to go through the effort of bringing people into town or bringing them to your city council meeting, encourage them to meet with lawmakers, give them talking points, have them go talk to the lawmakers and then meet you back in the room and give you the feedback so that you can look at, okay, we have supporters here, we have 5 legislators supporting it, here are 5 no's, here are 5 neutrals. What's our next strategy and tactic to move those lawmakers along? And so, I love a good rally. I love seeing people come together. It's a feel-good thing. I always sneak down to the university lobby day because they have, all the bands from the colleges across the state out there. And it's a big fun time. But, it's really cool to see those students and those teachers to go in and ask for funding for higher ed. And it's really, kind of cool to see that happen and higher ed usually being successful in getting, what they want. And so always, try to get the most out of your event. Also at lobby days and rallies, bring your lawmakers to them. It's a challenge to get them to come down and to stand. But if you give them a speaking part, 1, they love that kind of stuff. But 2, it holds them credible. 3, they can see the support right there in front of their eyes. And so, think about through your event how you can be really effective and engage lawmakers from point A to point B on those. We talked about meeting with decision makers. We talked about it being local. Take the opportunity to meet with your lawmakers or your decision makers at the local level, whether it's calling them up and asking them, hey, can you have a cup of coffee with me? Can I swing by your district office? Again, they work for you. Their information is on the website. Have your lawmakers get to know your members and the people that you're advocating for. So this is Representative Peblin Warren. She was our child care bill sponsor, and she met with the family multiple times before she championed the bill. So she was well aware of the issues, and she was a real champion for us. And this over here is a picture with Governor Bentley, who we surprised him. I wouldn't always say go by and do that, but he was, you know, threatening us that he's not going to fund Medicaid. And we also wanted to change the image. So we were able to gather several little kids that have been impacted by, that were on Medicaid for multiple reasons, and took them to meet with him and had them share their stories with him. And so it was pretty effective. I think we changed his mind that day. You know, when you're meeting with decision makers, whether it's in the district or at their office in Montgomery, you know, be respectful, share your stories, share the data. Someone mentioned data earlier. Data is pretty powerful. I know we're in a world right now where it seems like science is not as effective, but if you can keep the data short and sweet and meaningful, you know, data is hard to dispute if you've got the facts. Share, you know, fact sheets. You can create data images for like social media, postcards, that sort of thing, and sharing the data and the reason why is always important. Just remember that you've got the power. You elect elected officials. You can hold them accountable, especially you know, if you're in their district or if you know people that are in their district. You have the responsibility and right to let them know how you feel about issues. At the end of the day, they want to hear from you. You're their constituent, and without you, they wouldn't be in office. They're there to serve us and to address the issues that we all face. And so it can be intimidating and it can be overwhelming. And certainly you don't have to do all of this stuff. You can just do a small little piece. But, you know, I hope this gives you guys some tools and tactics to empower you to advocate for some of the issues you care about. I wanted to leave you with this. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. A really good example that I was not a part of, but I got to watch from afar, was a group of moms and dads with autistic children. They literally took on one of the most powerful groups in the state, Blue Cross Blue Shield. And when I say Blue Cross Blue Shield had the Business Council of Alabama and every powerful lobbyist there is, they did. And this group of people advocated so that their children, so insurance would pay for therapy for autistic children that was not currently being paid for. And it took them 2 years, but this group of people not only did media advocacy letters, they would go to a committee meeting and they would speak, they held rallies, they met with lawmakers. They would, after a committee meeting, if there was a lawmaker who voted no, or even if they voted yes, they all split up and went to their offices, met with them. They met with them in their districts. They made phone calls. They really rallied together, and it was a dad that organized these people, these families. And so, you know, it could start off small and it could end up something as large as this. This is only a small portion of people that would show up at the State House because the committee room was so small. They ended up moving it to a smaller committee room. So lobbyists didn't look like they were outnumbered. So, you know, there's several different ways that you can advocate and pull resources together that are free. You know, craft your message, craft a plan. I always like to have a plan, even if it's a real basic plan, and certainly the plan will change over time. But finding people that care about your issue and who will help advocate is going to be powerful. Do y'all have any questions?
I have a comment. Who was that? Chris Reeves? I'll yield to you if that was Chris. Was that Chris?
It was not. Thank you, but it was not.
Okay. Well, one of the things, and the reason why we chose to do this and to have Jada in, we've got to realize that these individuals are human just like us. They have children who are in public schools, or they have grandchildren. And so we need to build relationships with them. When we went to the Capitol, when ASAHPERD had their lobby day, and a lot of people weren't in there. They weren't doing a lot of people going into the Capitol, but we started having conversations with individuals, and then we realized that we had so much in common. And Jamie started talking to someone and realized that they had so many connections, people that they knew. So it's about building relationships. And with that, you also build respect. And those individuals, when you approach them and say, I'm concerned about this, or I'm passionate about this, or whatever, they will listen to you because you've already built a relationship. And I tell people, don't wait until lobby day, don't wait until rally to let people know who you are and what you do. When Chris and I did lobby day in DC, we didn't often talk to the congressman or the senator, but we talked to their representatives. And many of them, well, I have, a daughter, or I have children who are in public school, and blah, blah, blah. But they, also Chris invited them to his school. Yep. So a lot of times you have to let people see who you are and what you're doing, so they will have buy-in as well. So for those of you who are on today, this evening, make sure you start building those relationships so that people know that when you speak, you are speaking because it is something that you're passionate about, that you feel is a wrong, and something that should and can be corrected, if they come on board. So I'm hoping at some point this will be shared with our district reps so that they can share it with their teachers. I saw where Cindy O'Brien is on, and I follow Cindy on Twitter because she shares everything that she does. And that's what you have to do. You have to let people know that you have a quality program and that you are implementing, but then you also need to show them that you got 70 kids and you're in a space that's like a mousetrap.
Yep. And Connie, I just want to add to that, that can be so powerful, being, building that relationship, but also becoming that expert that, your classroom, your programs. And so once you start building the relationship with those lawmakers, you become their expert. You're their expert that they turn to ask you, well, is this true? Or is this data accurate? What do you think? Oftentimes they'll call and say, hey, to their principal or whomever, and say, whoever they have a relationship with, and say, hey, should I vote for this or not? Mm-hmm. And so I'm so glad you made that point. I will say, I love the idea of bringing them to your classroom. One of the most effective ways that we were able to get Republicans to support pre-K is we brought them to the classroom. So bring them to your schools and to your classrooms, let them see that's the most powerful way to influence them.
Mm-hmm. And they're waiting for you to do it. They really are. Mm-hmm. They're waiting for you to ask them. They really are. Well, yep. Some of them are.
Yeah. Well, at least if you get their picture and put it in the media, some of them will really like you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just step in? I want to remind people who are on this call or listening to this call that advocacy also starts at home and in your professional career, which we hit on earlier. And Jada, I like that quote and I use it often in my stuff. But a success story in that is a couple years ago, physical education was not represented in the Every Student Succeeds Act committee at the State Department of Education when the State Department was putting their stuff together. Ginger put together a petition for us to get Nancy Ray, who was the state person at the time, on that committee. Through our persistence in physical educators coming together, Nancy got on that committee. So when people oftentimes think about the power of the change that they can make, it's also understanding where your role may be. So we go back to, like, in my particular job, I can't be the person that goes to lawmakers with a specific ask, but I can tweet, I can do rallies, and I can be the person that emails and sends the emails. And so, like, when some people are like, I don't know what I can do with my job or what I can't do, it's understanding that no, regardless of where you feel comfortable, what you can do, there's always a role for you to do. And it may not always be about driving lawmakers and change, but we should always be striving to have those in our communities, those at the state level, the State Department, as well as lawmakers, knowing what quality physical education is and what they should be seeing in their classrooms. And so I just want to say that for anybody that's listening, like, you can't say, that's not me, I'm not going to the state, because there is a role for everybody every day when it comes to promoting healthier lifestyles across all Alabamians.
You're exactly right. And there's, I'm not sure how many of you guys got to participate. I know, Connie, you did. There's a presentation that we can share with you guys that one of our legal colleagues did just recently, lobbying versus non-lobbying, and gives some real examples. And so I think it makes some state employees or teachers and whoever a little bit more comfortable. You can also advocate in your own personal time outside of your job, as long as it's not, you're not advocating for something that impacts your job per se. Well, teachers advocate for pay raises all the time, so that's not necessarily true, but there's, we can share that. It's a webinar that we can share with you guys if you think that's appropriate, Connie, that people can get
it was very good. Yes.
Get better understanding of what they can and can't do, help, pushing the limit.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. Yes.
I would like to also share about kind of piggyback off of what Penny said with being in a role, like as the district wellness committee chair, I was able to look at our tobacco policy, which that's not even what we were charged with to do. I mean, we were revising the wellness policy, which is supposed to be revised every 3 years. So I took it upon myself to look at some other policies that we had and looked at the tobacco policy, because that's just a hot topic right now. And that's how we were able to get the tobacco policy revised and updated. It hadn't been updated since 2015. So, I mean, I felt very fortunate, again, being in the role that I was in, that I was able to get that policy changed. So just take advantage of the positions that you get put in. There are so many ways that you can advocate for what you believe in. Again, I was just fortunate to be in this role to be able to do this. So now moving forward, now I'm looking at the water access policy, water hydration, to see if we can do something with that in our school system and get water hydration stations, set up in our schools. So just take advantage of roles that you've been put in, and you have a passion for something, or you see a need for something in your school system, or just take it in. And all they can do is say no, or they can say yes. And in our case, I didn't even get any questions when I was presenting the tobacco revisions. I was like all ready and had my stats and everything to be defensive and say, this is why, they didn't even ask me any questions. So just take what your role is and what you've been given, and just find what you're passionate about and what's going to help your school and your school system, and just go forward with it.
Start where you can gain success. Small steps make huge impact. And, it's almost like one person at a time, and that's why I love working on the local level, because, a lot of us have relationships with those individuals. And when you can connect them with your cause, then you're always going to step a little bit further toward what you're advocating for or what you want policy change on. So again, and then respect is so important too. You know, and I'm going to say this, and then we're going to cut and see if anybody else wants. But I don't know, I get so nervous when we use the word tactic, because I'm thinking that, oh, are we attacking someone because of whatever? But I like to use the term strategic plan, you know, so that, you know, developing a strategic plan that you can share with those individuals who you want to help you make the change, those individuals who are in power that can help you make the change. And you all, I am almost 69 years old. And throughout my lifetime, I have seen the power of change. And I have seen small groups of people who were so passionate about something. And like Jada said, you know, stories, if you have stories to tell, you know, because that's reality. You know, they can't say, oh, no, that didn't happen. That's reality. I had a friend that probably would have died she had a stroke, but her daughter, luckily, her flight had gotten changed and she did not leave. But if she had not been there and knew fast, you know, because she's a flight attendant, you know, my friend would have died because nobody would have been in that house with her. And so the Heart Association in Palm Coast or Orlando, they did a story on her because the quick reaction of her daughter literally saved her life. And so there are so many stories that should be told, but they're not being told. So I'm just going to leave you all with, make sure you tell your stories. And, you know, it could be social media, it could be the newspaper, because newspapers are looking for stories, y'all. They really are. And so share your story so that we can make change and make a positive impact on the community that we live. So thank you so much.
All right. Any questions from anybody? Anybody have anything else they want to add?
I really appreciate you guys letting me join you today. And anybody wants to call and strategize, I love a good strategy session. So thank you guys for letting me be here, and I appreciate it.